Hi everyone, good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
"Happy birthday, Savannah," exclaimed her mother, bringing a big beautiful cake with 5 candles into the room. "Well, daughter, make a wish and blow out the candles," said the father, utting the birthday girl. "I want us to always be together." The girl said her wish aloud and quietly added, "and a big doll from the department store." Everyone laughed, and the grandmother opened the closet door and took out the doll that Savannah had asked her mother for the day before, but she said she wasn't ready to spend that much money on toys. The girl was confused with joy. She looked at the doll and did not move. "Well, why are you standing there as if petrified?" Grandfather asked with a smile. "Dreams must come true." Savannah ran up to her grandmother and, stretching out her arms to the much-desired gift, whispered, "Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa. You're the best." "Ruthie Finn, you're spoiling Savannah too much," the birthday girl's mother said in a disgruntled tone. She didn't think it was necessary to fulfill every whim of a child, but her husband's parents didn't share her view. "Joanna, when else can you spoil her?" Grandfather interceded. "We don't know how life will turn out in the future. Let the child be happy." "And who else should we spoil, as not the only granddaughter?" supported her husband mother-in-law. Savannah was used to such conversations. She had heard them from a very young age, so she did not react in any way. Sitting at the table, mentally she was already in the yard with her new doll. "All the girls will be jealous," Savannah thought and smiled at her thoughts. Joanna and Peter met at a party with mutual friends 7 years ago. For the guy, it was love at first sight, and Joanna already had a beau. She dreamed of marrying him and made far-reaching plans for their future together. But only the beau was not in a hurry to propose marriage. According to his own admission, he has not yet walked. "Why rush? We need to look at each other," he said, looking around. "I'm 21 years old now," Joanna explained to him. "I want a family, children. What's the point of stalling? We've already been dating for 2 years. But her words flew past the beau's ears. "And here is the birthday party of a classmate, to which were invited friends of her fiancé. Among them stood out Peter, tall, handsome, smart, intelligent, with higher education, and even with money, but very shy. However, his shyness did not prevent him from proposing to Joanna on the second date. The girl realized that she did not feel love for her new acquaintance, but she really wanted to rub her beau's nose in it. So not thinking long, she agreed. 2 months later, they had a lavish wedding. Everything as it should be. White dress, veil, cortege of several identical cars. Her friends were dying of envy. "Well, Joanna, good for you. You got yourself such a guy. A city boy with an apartment, even if it's his parents, well-to-do. Now, like a cheese and butter, you will ride," they said. After the wedding, the newlyweds went on vacation in Turkey. For a whole week they basked in the sun on the hot sand, breathed the sea air, and enjoyed the sound of the surf. Joanna was happy, but that feeling quickly passed. After returning from the wedding trip, they plunged into everyday life. Peter worked from morning to evening. Joanna studied at the last year of trade school. The newlyweds saw each other only at breakfast and in the evening, when Peter came home from work, but Joanna was even glad of it. After studying, she had time to meet with her girlfriends, gossip with them. She saw her ex-boyfriend a couple times. He was walking in the company of his new girlfriend and did not pay any attention to her. His indifference hurt Joanna's ego, and she decided to herself, "I'm going to be happy. In spite of you, I will." After the wedding, the newlyweds lived with Peter's parents. In their 2-room apartment in the city center, of course, not scattered, but there was enough room for everyone. In that smaller room lived the owners, and the big one was given to his son and daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law took care of the housework. "You'll have time, you'll work hard," she said maternally to Joanna. "All life ahead. Here will be born children, then and learn to cook, and washing, and ironing. And while you are young, have fun and enjoy life." My daughter-in-law didn't resist. She was satisfied with such a carefree life. After graduating from school, she got a job in the nearest store to the house. The salary was small, but it was enough for small pleasures. On weekends, Joanna had fun with her friends at karaoke or at the disco, and occasionally bought herself some new clothes. Peter did not resent. He was pleased to see his wife satisfied and happy. Friends envied and at the same time surprised. Not a man, but a dream, they said about Peter. And anything does not limit, does not prohibit anything. No scolding. You, Joanna, you should carry him in your arms. He should thank God that he met me on his way, she replied with a laugh. Not everyone agrees to live with her parents. Yes, your mother-in-law is a holy woman, explained Friends. One can only dream of such a woman. Then dream on, Joanna parried. But for me it's better to live separately. But Peter seems to be happy with it, she concluded sadly. A year after the wedding, Joanna became pregnant. Peter was happy. He blew the dust off his beloved wife. Ruthie and Finn were looking forward to having a granddaughter. They took care of their daughter-in-law, didn't let her overwork, made sure she ate well, and got enough sleep. Her mother-in-law shielded her from all household chores, although Joanna was not particularly eager to help her husband's mother. She liked to live on her own. At the same time, the young wife and future mother did not forget to mention at every opportunity, "It's not my apartment for me to do anything in." When Savannah was born, Joanna, strangely enough, did not feel any particular joy. She thought she was ready for motherhood, but the newborn baby only annoyed her. "I did not think that the child requires so much attention to himself," she complained to her friends. "It seemed to me that the first year he only does what he sleeps. But as it turns out, that's not true. Savannah wakes up bright and early in the morning, sleeps outside during the day, and at night he has to play with her. I'm exhausted, and what my figure has become like. Stomach protruding, breasts sagging, circles under my eyes. Joanna, you can't complain," her friends resented her. "Your mother-in-law freed you from household chores. Your duties are only to take care of your daughter, and you're not happy again." "Peter doesn't help me at all," she said with resentment. "He comes home from work, plays with his daughter for half an hour and goes to bed. What do you want? Your husband works all day and at night he has to take care of the baby while you sleep." "I don't know," claimed Joanna with annoyance, "but it's his daughter too." Time passed. The girl grew up. She no longer woke up at night and did not require constant attention. Joanna went to work and breathed a sigh of relief. Every morning she took her daughter to daycare and hurried to the store. In the evening, the young mother was in no hurry to return home. After waiting for her daughter to go outside, Joanna made a scandal. She was hurt that no one had consulted her. The gifts from her father and his parents pleased the birthday girl more than the new dress she had bought. Almost crying, she reproached her husband that he only spoiled his daughter and she had to bring her up and raise her. Unable to bear her daughter-in-law's accusations, Ruthie stood up for him for the first time since her son's wedding. "Joanna," she said in a calm, even tone, "instead of rejoicing with your daughter, you are making a scandal on her birthday. What's wrong with granting her wishes? The dress you picked out for Savannah is beautiful, but she's just a kid, and toys are more important to her than outfits." "That's not the point at all," my sister-in-law retorted. "It's just that you're trying to show me that I'm a bad mother, a bad wife, and a bad mistress." "Joanna, you are wrong," tried to calm her mother-in-law. "You are still young and you don't understand many things because of your inexperience, but everything will come with time. If only there was a will." "Are you saying I'm lazy? I don't want to do anything and I don't do it." "Odia, don't yell at my mom," Peter intervened. "You live in my parents' apartment on your own. They take care of our daughter. Savannah spends most of her time with them. You have no moral right to talk to your mom like that. I am still living in your parents' apartment because my husband can't afford to buy a separate place. You always say that you need to wait a little and everything will happen. But how long can we wait? We've been together for almost 7 years and still there." Peter was silent. Ruthie and Finn looked at their son sympathetically. After a short pause, the man said, "I wanted to surprise you on our wedding anniversary, but I guess I'll have to give up that idea. I've saved up enough money for a separate apartment. On the next weekend, we can look at the options and decide on the purchase of his apartment." Joanna opened her mouth in surprise. There was no trace of her previous resentment. She ran up to her husband and threw her. "Joanna," she said a little irritably, "will you be picking Savannah up from daycare today?" Joanna glanced at the clock. The hand showed the beginning of 8. Her husband was supposed to pick her up, Joanna replied. "I'll be there soon." Calling a cab, The woman dialed Peter's number all the way, but all she heard in response was a long dial tone. Out of anger over the ruined party, Joanna ran into the daycare center at 7:45. Savannah was sitting on a bench near her locker, fiddling with a rag doll. The teacher was showing her displeasure. "Excuse me," said Joanna, picking up her daughter. "I don't understand why her husband didn't pick her up." On the way home, ignoring Savannah, she tugged irritably at her daughter's arm and grumbled to herself, calling her husband an irresponsible egomaniac, a liar, and a bad father. As she crossed the threshold of the house, Joanna heard the phone ring. Mother-in-law popped up on the screen. "What does she want?" She grumbled. "It's like a conspiracy. Everyone urgently needed me today." "Hello? Joanna?" "Trouble." That was the first thing she heard on the phone. "Peter's in the hospital." "Tell me exactly what happened," she asked her sister-in-law in a frustrated tone. "The accident," swallowing her tears, explained her mother-in-law. "Peter is in surgery. I called you, but you didn't answer." Joanna left her daughter with a neighbor and went to the hospital. The doctor met her and told her that the victim had died on the operating table. Not immediately realizing the doctor's words, Joanna looked at her husband's parents sitting on the couch. Ruthie was weeping, and Finn sat pale as a sheet, cradling his grief-stricken wife in his arms. The next week passed like a blur. Sad faces, words of condolence, some people. But suddenly it was all gone. The empty house and the emptiness of the soul. Only her daughter as a reminder of her old life. Savannah, already shy, became withdrawn. She moved silently around the apartment like a shadow. Sorrow and sadness settled in her little heart. Time passed. Joanna gradually accepted her fate as a young widow. Unlike her, Savannah missed her father very much. She spent all her time with her favorite cat that her father had given her. The grandparents supported their granddaughter as best they could. They often took her and the cat to their house. Their love and kindness helped her cope with the loss of her father. When Savannah went to first grade, Joanna brought a strange man into the house. "I'd like you to meet him," she said. "This is my daughter Savannah, and this is Uncle Jack, who will be your daddy." The girl did not like her mother's new acquaintance. He was a short, stocky man with stubble on his cheeks and chin, and he was the opposite of Peter. The man held out his hand to the girl without a single muscle on his face. Savannah hid her little hand behind her back and said, "My daddy is dead." Soon Uncle Jack moved with his belongings into Joanna's apartment. His relationship with Savannah didn't go well from day one. The girl didn't like the fact that a strange man was running their house, and the shelves where her father's clothes had been were now full of his things. But no one was interested in her opinion. Her mother was completely infatuated with her new beau. She tried her best to please him, sometimes forgetting about her own daughter. Ruthie and Finn were very worried about their granddaughter. They could see that Savannah was not accepting of her mother's roommate. Whenever possible, the grandparents took their granddaughter with them. A few months later, Joanna announced that she was pregnant. In view of this, she and Jack decided to get married. On the rights of Joanna's husband, the man began to take an active part in the upbringing of her daughter. For every innocent misdemeanor, he scolded her and punished her. The mother never stood up for Savannah. She was always on the side of the new husband. In due time, a baby girl appeared in the family. They named her Lotta. Now she took all of Joanna and Jack's attention. They spent every spare minute with her. When the mother needed to do something around the house, she asked her eldest daughter to look after her sister. At such moments, Savannah looked with interest at the tiny hands and fingers of the newborn baby, talked to her and stroked her head, which had a light fuzz instead of hair. The girl felt no dislike or jealousy toward her sister. Savannah dreamed that when Fiona grew up, they would be best friends. Time passed, but the relationship between stepfather and stepdaughter did not get better. Savannah's constant presence annoyed Jack, but there was no hiding in the one-room apartment. One day, Savannah unwittingly witnessed a conversation between her mother and her new husband. "What do you suggest?" John asked. "Where am I going to put her?" "For starters, we could exchange the apartment for a larger one with 2 or 3 rooms," Jack suggested. "I can't sell this apartment without the consent of my mother-in-law and father-in-law," the woman replied. "They have shares in it after their son's death. So you should talk to them. Convince them that we are cramped with 4 people in one room," the husband insisted. When Savannah noticed, the couple was silent. A few days later, when Joanna brought her daughter to her grandparents, they talked again. After listening to her daughter-in-law, her mother-in-law asked, "Joanna, are you sure there's room for Savannah in the new apartment?" "What do you mean?" clarified daughter-in-law. "If you and your husband decide to take out a mortgage and said, we can buy your share of the apartment from you. You'll have the money for the down payment and we'll have the memory of our son." Joanna was not particularly pleased with her father-in-law's offer. She expected to get the whole apartment. But seeing the intransigence of her first husband's parents, she agreed. Ruthie and Finn sold their favorite dacha, where many years of rest from the bustle of the city, their car and garage. The money was just enough to buy out Joanna's share. And for Savannah? Surprised daughter-in-law asked, counting the money. "We'll give Savannah the apartment when she grows up," Ruthie promised. Jack was the most unhappy with the deal. "Let her stay in her own apartment," he said, referring to his stepdaughter. "You see, I'm supposed to feed and clothe her, and then she won't say thank you, and she'll fly off to her own apartment. I'll be working my ass off for the rest of my life, and she's already got her own place." "Jack, what could I do?" Joanna justified herself to him. "Don't be upset. We'll earn our own." "Yes, we'll earn it," her husband sneered. "With our salaries, we will live in hunger now." "But you wanted a spacious apartment," Joanna reminded him. "I didn't know the apartment wasn't yours," the husband admitted. "If I had, I wouldn't have gotten involved with you in the first place." "Jack, what are you talking about?" the woman said in a frightened tone. "You didn't get involved with me because of the apartment." "No, of course not," he reminded himself, stroking his little daughter's head as she ran up to him. "He was very fond of Fiona. I just don't think it's fair that one of your daughters already has an apartment and the other one is homeless." Fiona was growing up with her father, and Savannah had only real estate left from her father, Joanna argued. The new apartment had 2 rooms. One was for Joanna and Jack, and the other was a nursery. Savannah and Fiona were friendly. The older sister enjoyed taking care of the younger sister, and the younger sister paid the older sister with her love, which Savannah lacked in her new family. Her stepfather still paid no attention to her, except when she needed to be scolded or punished for something. Her mother had always been cold to Savannah, and with the birth of her second daughter, she had grown cold to her. One day, when Savannah was in 6th grade, she came home from school earlier than usual. Her mother was at work, her sister was in kindergarten, and her stepfather had been home for days. He had been fired from his job and was looking for another one. That afternoon, Savannah noticed another woman's shoes in the hallway. When Jack saw his stepdaughter, he was furious. "What are you doing home at this hour?" he yelled. "You're supposed to be at school." "I felt bad, and I was released from the last lesson," the girl excused herself, looking at someone else's shoes. "Do we have company?" "No, it's a neighbor who came by. She was just leaving," answered the stepfather. "Go to your room." Waiting until Savannah was out the door, Jack saw her off and went to his stepdaughter's room. "How are you feeling?" he asked for the first time in all the years of living with Savannah's mother. "I'm fine," she replied, surprised by her stepfather's concern. "Savannah, don't tell your mother that the neighbor came by," Jack asked. "Otherwise she'll think of something." "Think what?" The girl didn't understand. "Nothing," said the stepfather. "Just don't tell her." Savannah didn't tell her mother about the neighbor's visit, but she noticed that Joanna's relationship with her husband had become strained. They often fought, accusing each other of every mortal sin. Often the girls were caught in the middle. Savannah went more and more often to her grandparents, where she was still loved and pitied. One day, after another family scandal, she packed her things and left, telling her mother, "I don't want to put up with your husband anymore. I'm sick of the endless scolding. I'm going to a place where I'm always welcome and where I'm always expected." Joanna did not dissuade her daughter. At that moment, it was as if a stone had been lifted from her shoulders. For the next week, she never called her mother-in-law and asked her how her daughter was doing. Meanwhile, Savannah seriously took up her studies, which in recent years limped, corrected all her bad grades. Teachers noted the changes in the girl. She became calm, more sociable, cheerful. Savannah did not remember about her mother. She only missed her little sister. By her senior year, Savannah had made up her mind about her choice of profession. "I will study psychology," she told her grandparents. "Our university has a psychology department." "Well, that's a good choice." Finn supported her. "Psychology is a serious science," Ruthie agreed. When she heard about her daughter's decision, Joanna laughed. "What kind of profession is that? Being the shoulder to cry on for strangers." She said, You don't have enough problems of your own to solve other people's problems. Why are you doing this? Her mother's reaction didn't surprise Savannah. She was used to Savannah ridiculing all her ideas and considering them delusional. Maybe I can understand you, the daughter explained. Why do you live with a man who doesn't respect or appreciate you? Why do you love him more than your own daughters? Aren't you ashamed to talk like that? Joanna was indignant. Jack raised you. He replaced your father. He dotes on Fiona. And if we fight a lot, that's what everybody fights about. Mom, do you really believe what you're saying? Savannah was surprised. He's been and still is sitting on your neck all his life. He may love Fiona, but he has nothing to do with me. You're wrong if you think that this bum, Alfonso and womanizer could replace my father. He's no match for my dad. My grandparents raised me, but you, for some reason, think otherwise. I'm not judging you. It's your choice. Everyone has what they deserve. As she listened to her eldest daughter's words, Joanna silently gulped air with her mouth open, as if she couldn't get enough of it. Finally, when Savannah was silent, her mother gritted her teeth. You and great. Savannah only smiled, remembering how she had left her mother's house a few years ago and never once regretted it. You are wrong, Mom, she answered calmly to Joanna's accusation. I am very grateful to my father, from whom I inherited wonderful genes. I am immensely grateful to my grandparents, who put their souls into me, taught me to forgive and appreciate the good things I have. I am grateful to you for giving me life and not preventing me from leaving home. I'm even grateful to Fiona, who loves me and respects me, unlike you. But I have nothing to be grateful to a stranger who came to our house years ago on a whim and did not lift a finger to earn my trust and favor. Joanna answered her daughter nothing. With a glare, she ran out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Savannah enrolled in college. She liked her chosen specialty. She devoted all her time to her studies. Savannah was well regarded by her teachers. She was predicted a great professional future. After graduating from the institute with a red diploma, Savannah, among the 5 best students, was sent for an internship in one of the centers of psychological help to people in difficult life situations. The girl was happy to get such a chance. Ruthie and Finn were proud of their granddaughter. They decided that it was high time to give her a worthy gift. Savannah, her grandmother, addressed her. You know how much your grandfather and I love you, and we want you to be happy. We are proud of your accomplishments and hope that they will only increase from here on out. You are now an adult, fully capable of living on your own. We've decided. Ruthie paused to catch her breath. We decided to give you an apartment, her grandfather finished for her. Savannah couldn't believe her eyes when she found herself in the very apartment where she had been happy, where the walls still remembered her father. I thought it had been sold a long time ago, she admitted. Her mom said that they had put the proceeds as a down payment on the apartment they still lived in. Yeah, we had to buy Joanna out, Finn admitted. So that's why you sold the house, the car, and the garage. Savannah guessed. And we don't regret it one bit, Ruthie said. You're our only granddaughter. You're all we have left of Peter. So please accept our gift as a token of our undying love for you. Thank you. Savannah thanked them through tears of happiness. I love you too. You are my most dear people in this world. Soon Savannah moved into her own apartment. She could not visit her grandparents every day, but she called them regularly to check on their health. After an internship at the Center for Psychological Help to people in difficult life situations, Savannah was offered to stay there to work. The salary is small, but the experience will be great, the director said, holding out her employment contract. Savannah agreed without hesitation. She had gotten used to the team during the year. Besides, she liked helping people. She got inexplicable pleasure from the fact that someone, thanks to her, became a little happier. Fiona often visited her older sister. Savannah got news from her, though it was hardly news. Nothing had changed in her mother's household. Jack still wasn't working, but he said he was looking for a decent job, which was hard to believe. I've seen my father with other women a few times, Fiona confessed one day. I think he's cheating on Mom. Fiona, don't think about it, her sister advised her. Let the parents sort it out themselves. Getting involved in a couple's relationship is a thankless task. You're probably right, Fiona agreed. Can I stay at your place tonight? What about school? We don't have school tomorrow, she explained. We're going on a field trip as a class. Then you can stay, Savannah said happily. On nights like this, the sisters didn't go to bed for long. They ate dinner and talked for hours over a cup of tea. Fiona shared her secrets with her sister, asked for advice, told her about her plans for life. Savannah listened to her with pleasure. She liked that, despite their different fathers and age difference, they were very close. When Savannah turned 25, she didn't organize a feast with her friends. The birthday girl invited her grandmother, grandfather, Fiona, and mother. However, Joanna, citing ill health, did not come, congratulating her daughter on the phone. Fiona was sad and silent that evening, waving her hand in the air and turning the subject away. Ruthie and Finn congratulated their granddaughter and wished her to meet a decent man. "When you're married to a trustworthy man, then you can die with peace of mind," Finn said. "Grandfather, what are you talking about?" His granddaughter stopped him. "You'll still have great-grandchildren to nurse." "God willing," Ruthie whispered quietly. But it did not happen what they had wished for. 6 months later, after a heart attack, Finn died. Ruthie had outlived her husband by a year. Before he died, however, she had made a will for her granddaughter. To Savannah's surprise, Joanna came to her mother-in-law's funeral. She hadn't spoken to her first husband's parents or been to her father-in-law's funeral in all these years, but here she was. "Mom, thank you for being there," her eldest daughter thanked her. "I couldn't leave you alone on such a day," the mother replied. "Nothing has changed here," she said, looking around the apartment. "Except for the wallpaper. They haven't even changed the furniture." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Savannah couldn't believe her ears. "What do you mean, what?" Her mother explained without embarrassment. "It's been so many years since we left this apartment, and it feels like yesterday. We could have at least changed the furniture." "I don't think this is the right moment to discuss this," the daughter remarked. "But I want to remind you that my grandparents raised me, fed me, clothed me. You forgot about me the moment I left home." "Don't exaggerate, daughter. I always remembered you. But I realized that you would be better off with them," the mother justified herself. After waiting for a while, Joanna came to Savannah with a cake. What an unexpected visit. The daughter couldn't help pouring tea. "To what do I owe the honor?" "Don't be sarcastic," Joanna asked her. "After all, I'm your mother. I'm worried about you." "It's strange to hear you say that. After all these years," Savannah admitted, "but it feels good." Joanna was suddenly silent, looking around. Finally, taking a sip of tea, she asked, "What do you plan to do with the apartment?" "Nothing. I'll renovate it and move in." "Why do you need a 2-room apartment all by yourself?" "It's not just an apartment," Savannah replied. "It's where I grew up and was happy. And besides, it's in the center of town, a 5-minute walk from my work." After a brief pause, her mother asked, "What about your studio apartment?" "It won't go to waste," Savannah assured her. "I'll rent it out." Clearly not satisfied with her older daughter's plans, Joanna finished her tea and said goodbye. Eventually, Savannah renovated the 1-bedroom apartment and moved out, renting the 1-bedroom to a coworker. By Savannah's time, Fiona had graduated from high school and enrolled in college. Joanna continued to visit her eldest daughter in order to persuade her to give the apartment to her sister. "I don't understand what Fiona has to do with this apartment," Savannah wondered. "Why should I give it to her?" "But you two get along so well." "She's your little sister," Joanna argued. "You can't be so selfish." "I inherited the apartment from my father. Fiona has her own father. Let him take care of his daughter." "Savannah, you know Jack has nothing to offer his daughter, right?" Joanna tried to persuade her, but seeing Savannah's intransigence, she used one last argument. "By the way, this apartment is as much mine as yours. I'm in Harris just like you. I'm entitled to a share of the apartment." "Yes," agreed the daughter. "You had the right until you sold your share to your grandparents, and they disposed of their property as they saw fit, and I will not violate their will." "What kind of a mother are you if you can't negotiate with your own daughter?" Jack reprimanded his wife. "Legally, she was right," Joanna replied. "She inherited both apartments, and I can't do anything about it." "What does law have to do with family?" the man insisted. "Why does she need 2 apartments by herself? She used to live in a 1-room apartment, and she could go on living there. She'd give the 2-bedroom to her sister, especially since Fiona's getting married. And when the kids are born, where will we all be housed together?" "No, I can't have a strange man in my apartment." "What do you suggest?" "I've talked to Savannah many times, but she's stubborn. She says, 'Mine, that's it.' If she won't do it nicely, then we'll try a trick," Jack said. "She's renting out a studio apartment anyway. What does she care who she rents to? Fiona should ask Fiona to be her tenant." "Why?" Joanna didn't realize. Savannah wouldn't take money from her own sister. Her conscience wouldn't allow it, Jack suggested, and even if she did, she'd be out of money in a couple months. Savannah wouldn't be able to kick Fiona out on the street. Joanna thought about what her husband had said. It doesn't seem right, she hesitated. Is it right when in one family one child is living and the other begging? When Fiona returned from the institute, her father called her for a talk. Daughter, we've been discussing it with your mother and we've decided that it's unfair for one sister to have everything and the other nothing. I'm talking about Savannah's apartments, Jack explained. But she inherited them from her father, she reminded him. I have no claim on her. Maybe you don't, but I do, the father said irritably. Selfishness must be rooted out. What do you suggest? Fiona asked. The father outlined his devious plan to his daughter. Fiona listened carefully and turned to her mother. Do you agree with it? Joanna shrugged her shoulders uncertainly, but then answered, But you have to live somewhere. Your Adam is a country boy. You can't live in a dormitory. It's expensive to rent an apartment, and it's inconvenient for everyone to live with us. That's why you decided to take Savannah's apartment. Daughter, watch your language. Her mother shouted at her. This is your sister we're talking about. I thought it was about our family enemy. Fiona retorted. Mom, Savannah is your own daughter, just like me. She suffered enough. I wouldn't want her to be an orphan with her mother alive. And now to deprive her of financial compensation for her lack of love. What are you talking about? Joanna was indignant. Your father and I are doing our best for you. I think he's right. It would be better to try to earn an apartment for me and give it to me as a wedding present. My father only talks, but does nothing. I didn't expect such meanness from you, Fiona said and ran out of the house. She walked down the street and thought about what had happened. Fiona loved her sister and sometimes did not understand why her mother was so cold to her. What could so mess up a child to send her to live with her grandparents? Didn't she miss her eldest daughter for all these years? Doesn't Mom realize that she is pushing Savannah farther and farther away from her with her attitude? These and other questions arose in Fiona's mind one after another. She was walking wherever she was going, and when she stopped, she realized she had come to her sister's workplace. After standing in front of the entrance to the center for a few minutes, the girl stepped inside. She had been here a few times, but had never paid attention to the patients or clients of this facility. Today, as she walked up to the nurse's office, she was confronted by several women. They were all different in age, status, and appearance. But the one thing they had in common was the deep sadness, if nothing else, the detachment in each one's eyes. I guess they lack love too, Fiona thought to herself. Sighs. She heard Savannah's voice behind her. What are you doing here? Inviting her guest into the study, Savannah poured tea and sat down next to her sister. You seem strange, she noted. Did something happen? Did you have a fight with Adam? Or something with Mom? No, they're fine, Fiona reassured her sister. Savannah stopped talking and looked at her carefully, but the girl didn't dare to speak. She seemed to regret coming here. Savannah didn't insist on talking. She drank her tea silently and occasionally glanced at her sister. Savannah, do you love Mom? Fiona asked suddenly. Of course, the older sister answered without hesitation. Why do you ask? I've always been surprised by her so different attitude towards us, Fiona admitted. It often seemed to me that you were not her own daughter. She always neglected you with attention, affection, care, love. Why so? Why do you have such thoughts? Savannah was surprised. I thought, what if I have more than one child? Will I love someone more? Sis, Savannah smiled and hugged Fiona. It's pre-wedding jitters. To a mother, all children are the same, and you will love them all. Why are we treated differently? Fiona didn't give up. I've been thinking about that too, Savannah admitted. Maybe Mommy resents Daddy for leaving her alone with a small child, she said. What nonsense. How can you take offense at a man for being dead? The girls drank tea in silence and thought about their own things. Finally, Savannah stood up, cleared the table, and sitting down next to her sister and taking her hand, said, It's going to be different for you. You and Adam love each other, and when children are born, you will love them too. And Mom, Savannah was silent for a few seconds and continued, Mom is an unhappy woman. She needs to be understood and pitied. She was a young widow after her first marriage, and her second husband was a bum and an Alfonso. I'm sorry. I'm not offended, Fiona replied. I love my father, but he's really been living off my mother all his life. Why has she put up with him for so many years? Does she love him? More like she's afraid of being alone, Savannah suggested. She can't be alone. She has us. Fiona was childishly indignant. There was a knock on the door, and a woman came in the next second. Savannah, I need your help, she said, and then she was gone as suddenly as she had appeared. Savannah got up from her chair and walked over to her sister. It was good to see you. Don't fill your pretty little head with bad thoughts. You're going to be fine, and I'll always be there for you. And if you need my help, I'll be there for you. I didn't think my daughter would grow up to be selfish, Joanna said after Savannah refused to give one of the apartments to her sister. Maybe I should have been more involved in her upbringing, and she wouldn't have grown up selfish, Savannah argued. Are you saying that your grandparents didn't treat you well? Your mother was surprised. No. I'm saying that they raised you the way they thought was right, the daughter explained, and you have no moral right to judge them. They gave me much more than you did. Joanna didn't like this kind of talk. She could not accept criticism of herself, especially from her daughter. Perhaps it hurt her that Savannah was telling the truth, and she felt guilty in her heart for her eldest daughter. Preparations for Fiona's wedding were in full swing. The date had already been set, invitations sent out and rings purchased when Savannah had been asked to head the new branch of the Center for People in Difficult Situations. But that would mean traveling to another city. She hesitated. I'm not ready to give up everything right now. Is there anything to give up? The director asked. Is there something keeping you here? Or maybe someone? No, Savannah was embarrassed. It's just that my sister's wedding is coming up. Oh, good. You can go on vacation, she suggested. You'll gain experience, you'll get the branch up and running, and in a year or two you'll be back here in my place. Savannah had no reason to say no. The colleague who rented her apartment had also moved to another city. Savannah, aware of her sister's housing problem, offered her and her husband a one-room apartment for a while until they could find a place of their own. Fiona was happy and did not hide it. Only her stepfather was dissatisfied. She could have offered her sister a two-bedroom, he grumbled. After Savannah left, Fiona called her often to share the latest news. One day she blurted out that her mother was on sick leave. Is it serious? Savannah was worried. There was silence for a while, but then Fiona laughed playfully and said, No, it's nothing. After talking to her sister, Savannah's anxiety persisted. It seemed to her that Fiona wasn't telling her the whole story. She called her mother. Joanna didn't answer the phone right away, but when she picked up the receiver and heard her eldest daughter's voice, she was very happy, much to Savannah's surprise. Fiona said, You're sick. She's a chatterbox, her mother said cheerfully. 2 sneezes and she's already told everyone. I didn't tell everyone, Mom, Savannah said reproachfully. That's not what I meant. Joanna began to defend herself. Don't worry, I'm fine. Tell me what's new with you. You're not going back yet? No, things are just starting to settle down around here. I don't think we'll be fully operational for another 6 months at the earliest. Jack hasn't got a job. He's been moonlighting here and there, Joanna mused. I see, same as always. I've got to go, my mother suddenly hurried off. Call me? Don't be a stranger, she said and hung up. Savannah listened to the short beats for a while. She found this conversation strange. Her usually disgruntled mother was as sweet and cheerful as ever. 6 months passed for Savannah. The work at the center's branch office was well established. After the inspection, the superiors were not stingy with compliments. Savannah was proud of herself and her team. In addition, she had a man in her life. She met John at the center. He worked as an EMT, and one day when he arrived on a call, he saw an elderly woman who had been beaten. She refused to be hospitalized, and she was afraid to stay at home. It's not the first time my husband has beaten me, but I have never seen him so angry, she confessed to the doctor. Call the police, he suggested. No way, the woman was frightened. He'll kill me when he comes back. Why don't you leave him? The doctor asked. Where would I go? I have no one left. No relatives, no friends. That man has driven everyone away from home. John felt truly sorry for the old woman, and he suggested that she contact the center for assistance to people in difficult life situations. Not immediately, but still the old woman agreed. John drove her himself and handed her over to Savannah. Subsequently, he visited the center several times and was interested in the well-being of his ward. The young people's working relationship quickly turned into sympathy, and a month after their first meeting, John introduced Savannah to his parents. Although John was not much older than Savannah, his parents were quite elderly. Intelligent, courteous, and pleasant to be around, they reminded Savannah of her grandparents. From that day on, she became a frequent visitor to John's family. "When are you leaving?" John asked. "Tomorrow morning," Savannah replied. Sadness flashed in the young man's eyes. "I'll be waiting for you," he promised. "I'll be there as soon as I'm done with the paperwork." The lovers could not part for a long time. The next day, Savannah reached home by lunchtime. When she closed the door behind her, she leaned against the wall and remembered with pleasure the happy moments when her grandparents were still alive. Her memories were interrupted by the phone ringing. "I'm listening," she said into the receiver. "Hi, sis." Fiona's voice sounded familiar. "When are you coming?" "I'm already home," Savannah answered. After a short pause, Fiona continued, "I didn't want to tell you, but you'll find out anyway. Mom's in the hospital." "What's wrong with her?" "Let's not talk on the phone. I'm going to visit her this afternoon." "Let's go together." Having settled the formalities of her transfer to her hometown to become the director of the help center, Savannah, she'd taken a few sick days to avoid showing up to work with bruises, but this is the first time she's been to the hospital. "Why did you tell me?" "My mom told me not to." "Did you file a police report?" Savannah asked. "What are you talking about? Mom doesn't even want to hear about it." A nurse stopped the girls at the checkpoint. "You can't go in together." "You go," Fiona suggested and handed her sister a robe. When she saw her eldest daughter, Joanna couldn't help but cry. Savannah's heart squeezed with pity. Always cold, always dissatisfied, the stern woman now looked like a wounded bird. Savannah wanted to hug her, hold her close, pity her, and tell her everything would be all right, but she held back her impulse. Sitting down next to the bed, she asked, "How are you feeling?" "Already fine," answered the mother, wiping the tears on her face. "Don't you want to tell me what happened?" Joanna silently turned away to the window. Tears flowed from her eyes again. She was ashamed to admit to her daughter what had happened. "Mom, I can help you," Savannah said, "if you want me to." Joanna continued to swallow her tears in silence. "Did Jack do this?" "Why?" "He's been drinking lately," her mother finally spoke. "His drinking takes up most of my paycheck. If I don't give him money, he raises his hand to me. And this time Jack came with his drinking buddies. I refused to set the table for them. Why do you put up with this? Why don't you leave him? Why don't you go to the police? Do you still love him?" "I'm afraid of him," Joanna confessed. "He won't let me live." "First, file a police report," Savannah advised. "No." "What are you talking about?" "Scared Mom. You have no idea what he could do." "Did you forget where I work?" Savannah reminded her. "I hear stories like this every day. If you don't do anything, it's not going to do any good. Either you get rid of your tyrant and Alfonso, or I'll wash my hands of you." "All right," Joanna agreed. "I'll do as you say." Upon learning of the statement, Jack went to his wife to confess. He swore that it would never happen again, that he would get a job and stop drinking. On her daughter's advice, Joanna was adamant. Still ingratiating and weeping, Jack became furious after his wife refused to take his statement from the police. Losing control of himself, he began yelling and threatening to kick her out of the house. Security escorted him out of the hospital and, at Savannah's request, informed her of the incident. In the evening, she went to her stepfather's house. After listening to him swear and threaten her, Savannah pulled out her phone and turned on the tape recorder, where everything was clearly audible. "I'll pass this on," she warned. "If you carry out any of your threats, you're going down for a long time. I'll make sure of that." "Why did you come?" Jack asked, realizing that this time it would be noisy. It was obvious that Joanna was confused, having been rebuffed by her daughter. She looked at her silently and flapped her eyelashes. "What about us?" the mother could only say. "You have your own life, I have mine." Savannah answered and turned around and walked in the other direction. "Savannah, is it true? Are you trying to kick us out of your apartment?" her little sister chirped into the phone. "Who told you that?" Savannah asked, not knowing what she was talking about. "Mom," Fiona answered. "She said you're selling the apartments and moving to the capital. Is that true?" "Maybe," Savannah admitted, starting to come out of her sleep. "When were you going to tell me?" Fiona shouted suddenly. "You know where I am, don't you?" I'm not supposed to worry. And you didn't even bother to tell me that Adam and I were going to be on the street soon. Don't be so dramatic, sis. Savannah tried to calm her down. Sis, Fiona asked her again. A sister would never do that. You know we have no place to live, and yet you're going to sell the apartment you invited us to. Savannah finally woke up to this kind of attack from her relative. She didn't like the tone in which Fiona had spoken to her. Was that in lieu of a thank you? She asked. I'd like to remind you that my offer was temporary. You and Adam were going to take out a mortgage, Savannah reminded her. I just wanted to help you save money on rent. What money are you talking about? Fiona was nervous. We're barely making ends meet. Adam studies and works, but his paycheck doesn't even pay for entertainment. Not to mention any major purchases. Why don't you ask your mom? Savannah suggested it. I'm sure she'd be willing to make you feel welcome. You bet she would, Fiona replied hotly. Mom is not you. She wouldn't spare anything for me. She'd give me her own apartment if you hadn't ruined it. I'm embarrassed to ask what's my fault, Savannah sneered. It's that you're selfish. Fiona was not stingy in her accusations. You're used to having everything done for you. You want to go to school, be my guest. You want an apartment, get an apartment. It's not enough to have one apartment, get another one. You never cared about anyone else. Savannah listened to her sister and wondered, does she really mean it? How could she pretend to be loving and understanding for so many years? The thoughts swirled around in her head. Savannah didn't notice when tears ran down her cheeks. Everything she had believed in, everything she had strived for, was crumbling before her eyes. The people closest to her had betrayed her once again. Savannah had no desire to prove or explain anything. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and said in as calm a tone as she could manage, I'm sorry, sister, for not living up to your expectations. But mine will stay with me, and I have no claim on yours. With that, Savannah dropped the call. The clock was approaching 6 o'clock. The city was still asleep. There was a ringing silence. Savannah mentally fell into an endless abyss. A pall of light came over her eyes. She wanted to scream, but she had no strength. Tears were streaming down her face, and her heart was beating so hard, as if it wanted to jump out of her chest. Savannah was pulled out of her daze by a phone call. The name John popped up on the screen. Shaking her head to bring herself to her senses, Savannah answered the call. Good morning, my love. The young man said hello cheerfully. I hope I didn't wake you up. I have some good news. Good morning, John. Trying not to show her depressed state, Savannah answered. I'm awake now. Did something happen to you? The young man suspected. Were you crying? No, I'm fine, she lied. Just a little cold. What bad timing? John complained. I finally settled the matter of the transfer. I start my new assignment in a week. I wanted to see you. Come, I'd be glad to. Then I'll pack all my things so I don't have to go back and come to you, said John, and you don't get discouraged. Drink tea with raspberries. I'll be as good as new when you get here, Savannah promised. 2 days later, she met John at the train station. The man was glowing with joy. Dropping the suitcase, he ran up to Savannah and took her in his arms and began to twirl her around. Finally, we are together, he rejoiced. Every day, John brought his beloved breakfast in bed and met her with a hot dinner from work. While Savannah was away from home, he fixed the faucets that had been leaking for a long time, changed the hinges in the kitchen cabinets, hung up her portrait with her grandparents, which had stood on the table leaning against the wall for several years. In short, he did all the manly things. In John's presence, Savannah felt happy and loved. The week flew by unnoticed. On the eve of John's departure, Savannah took a day off. In the morning, the lovers lounged in bed for a long time, and then, while the young man went to the train station to get tickets, the hostess prepared a delicious dinner. Having fortified themselves, they decided to walk around the city. Holding hands like schoolchildren, John and Savannah walked slowly through the park, enjoying the fresh, frosty air. They were warm and cozy with each other. The time flew by. For dinner, John invited Savannah to a restaurant. A glass of wine, light appetizers, romantic entourage, and quiet, peaceful music all helped Savannah to make this evening unforgettable. John took Savannah's hand and looked intently into her eyes. Will you marry me? Suddenly he asked, and taking advantage of her confusion, pulled a ring out of his pocket. At that moment, Savannah's heart was ready to jump out of her chest. She had been waiting for a marriage proposal from John for a long time and was ready to say yes, but she could not imagine that this moment would be so exciting for her. Gladly, Savannah replied and extended her hand to the young man. John left for the capital, and Savannah stayed in her city to wait for the transfer to another branch. After seeing her fiancé off, she plunged into her work. While dealing with other people's problems, Savannah forgot about her own. Having firmly decided not to dig into the past and to leave her relationship with her mother and sister as it was, she calmed down and began to focus on her own life. Having accepted the marriage proposal, Savannah asked John to do without lavish celebrations. The bride and groom agreed to get married in one of the capital's registries after the issue of Savannah's move was resolved. By Savannah's time, John promised to settle the issue of renting a place to live. Spring was in full swing. The snow had long since melted, leaving no trace behind. Nature was coming out of its winter hibernation. The riot of colors around created a joyful mood. The birds singing in different voices made my heart flutter. Savannah was waiting for her transfer to the capital, and she was eager to see her beloved. John, as promised, prepared everything for the bride's arrival, rented an apartment for the first time, set up everyday life, studied the real estate market. The long-awaited day had arrived. Savannah gathered all the necessary things for the first time, agreed with a realtor about the sale of their apartments, and went to the new life. All the way there, she thought about the last conversation with her mother and sister. "You are a bad daughter," her mother accused her. "Ungrateful. I gave you life as best I could, took care of you. Yes, you went to live with your grandparents, but that was your decision. I didn't kick you out. It's not my fault you couldn't get along with Jack. I didn't have to be alone for the rest of my life because of you, did I? I was too young when I was widowed. I needed a man. And you know, not everyone would take in a child. But Jack did, and he took you in. And you, kicked him out of the house. You were always trying to get me to be alone. You're selfish. I don't think anyone needs him but you," Savannah said. "Whistle and he'll come running. You have no right to insult my father." Fiona stood up for him. "I've always loved you and respected you as a big sister. You've been my role model in everything, but I didn't expect an apartment to come between us. And I didn't expect the price of your sisterly love to be an apartment." Savannah retorted. "You're ungrateful." Fiona repeated her mother's accusation. "For you, material things were more important than family ties." "That's not true," Savannah replied. "I haven't stopped loving you, but you, when you learned that there would be no division of my inheritance, quickly abandoned me." Joanna and Fiona spent a long time proving Savannah wrong, trying to press her pity and conscience. But their arguments didn't work on Savannah. After giving them a chance to talk, she left with the words, "I will not be manipulated. But I think the grandparents envisioned this situation, so they disposed of their property this way instead of the other way around. If you can't be happy for me with me, I won't bother your eyes and will leave. I don't want anything from you, but I don't owe you anything either. You have a husband," she turned to her sister, "so earn your own apartment. And if you can't, ask your father for help." At the new place, Savannah quickly settled in. The team was new, young, active. There was a lot of work, but Savannah always got home on time. She gave herself the attitude that family was the most important thing in her life. On the appointed date, the first day of summer, John and Savannah married. As agreed, they didn't invite guests to their first family party, deciding it was for the two of them. They still hadn't heard from Joanna and Fiona, but the realtor found buyers for Savannah's apartments. To solve the issue of the sale, she took 2 weeks of leave without pay and went to her hometown. Having settled all the formalities, Savannah was about to return, but before leaving, she decided to visit her relatives. As she approached her mother's house, she saw her sitting on a bench in the yard. It had only been 6 months since they had last seen each other, but it seemed to Savannah that she had aged a lot in that time. Joanna was sitting alone, staring intently at a single point in front of her. Sadness and longing were printed on her face. The wrinkles that were barely noticeable before had become deep. At the sight of her mother, Savannah's insides tightened. At that moment, she wanted to hug her and feel sorry for her, maybe even apologize for what she had said in haste. On impulse, Savannah rushed to her mother's side, but Jack came out of the driveway. When she saw him, Joanna got up quickly and scampered after him. Savannah stopped. As she looked at her mother and stepfather, she experienced a gamut of feelings: pain from another betrayal, anger, self-pity. Barely holding back tears, Savannah turned and ran back. That's when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. "Savannah, is that you?" The girl stopped and turned her head to see her sister with a bag in her hands. Despite her haggard appearance, she looked better. Pregnancy looked good on her. Waddling from foot to foot like a duck, Fiona approached Savannah. "How long have you been here?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. "2 weeks ago," Savannah answered. "For how long?" "I'm leaving today. I came to take care of some business." "And here?" Fiona paused, trying to formulate a question. "I wanted to stop by before I left to say goodbye," Savannah explained. "But no one was home," she lied. "You must have missed your mom," Fiona suggested. "She was going to." She was silent again, obviously not saying the right thing. "Leave." "Is everything okay?" Savannah asked. "Yeah, I'm fine." "Then I'm gonna go," Savannah said. "Would you like to come over for a visit?" Fiona asked in an uncertain tone. "Not tonight. Some other time," Savannah promised and was about to continue on her way, but her sister called out to her again. Savannah turned around and saw Fiona's guilty face. "Savannah," she addressed her sister as she had before. "I'm sorry for what I said to you the other day. You know, hormones. Don't hold it against me. I don't know what came over me. You're right. I had nothing to do with your inheritance. You're the only heir to your dad and his parents. I wasn't so lucky with my father. He never thought about me. He lived his whole life and still does for himself. What did my mom see in him?" "Don't worry." Savannah calmed her down. "I'm not mad at you. I get it. Everyone can make mistakes. The main thing is to realize it in time and repent." Savannah walked over to Fiona and Hunter. As she pressed against her sister, she felt a jolt to her stomach and bounced away. Fiona smiled and placed a hand on her tummy and said, "Well, there goes the niece you've met." The girls laughed. After the conversation with her sister, Savannah felt as if a mountain had fallen from her shoulders. Only one thought kept her mind. Did Mom really get back together with Jack? Had she forgiven him? Savannah didn't dare to ask Fiona about it. She was afraid to break the fragile peace that had formed between them the last time they'd met. "Why do you need this information?" John asked incomprehensively. "If your mom is fine with it, then you shouldn't care." "Whatever she is, she's my mother, and I can't live with that monster around her," Savannah justified. "What if he hits her again?" "But you can't stop your mother from hanging out with him. It's her choice." "You're right," Savannah agreed, sighing heavily. "And then there's your sister. I don't think she'll let her mother get hurt," John said before leaving. Turning the key in the lock, the man kissed his wife on the cheek and disappeared out the door. Savannah thought about it for a while longer, but gradually the daily routine distracted her from the bad thoughts. She plunged headlong into her work. On weekends, the newlyweds traveled from morning to night to view apartments. They decided not to hurry with the choice, especially since John's apartment was not sold. "There was nothing suitable for our money on the secondary market," Savannah said disappointedly, coming back from another viewing. "Why don't we look at new buildings?" John suggested it. "The price is lower." "Yes, but we don't know when the house will be finished. And then there's the renovation." "You need a lot of money for that too," Savannah replied. "It's better to renovate than to redecorate," John said with optimism in his voice. The next weekend, we decided to look at apartments and houses under construction. After waiting for the end of the work week, the couple were going to the construction company when Savannah's phone rang. "Hi, sis," she said cheerfully, answering the phone. But Adam's voice came through the phone. "Savannah, it's not Fiona," he said. "It's Adam." "Did something happen to her?" Savannah was worried. "No, no worry," her sister's husband reassured her. "I'm calling to tell you that you're an aunt. We had a baby girl. Fiona's asleep, so I thought I'd call you." "Congratulations," Savannah shouted with joy. "Why don't you come visit us?" Adam asked. "I can't yet. I'm swamped at work," Savannah explained. "But I'll try to be here by New Year's Eve, just in time for my niece to grow up and get stronger by Savannah's time." Saying goodbye to her sister's husband, Savannah told John the happy news, but noticed that he reacted too calmly, even indifferently. "I understand that they are strangers to you. If you could at least be happy for me," Savannah said with resentment in her voice. "I'm glad," John replied. "It's just that I think it's time you introduced me to your family. It's not human. We've been married for 3 months, and your mother and sister still don't know." "You're right, but you know how complicated my relationship with my relatives is." Savannah tried to justify herself. "I promised to make it up to them. We'll go to visit them together in the winter." After looking at several apartments in new buildings, the newlyweds chose the one they liked the most. The neighborhood is new, all the necessary infrastructure will be. The yards are arranged for children and adults to relax. Savannah listed the pluses of this object. Even the metro station is planned to open in walking distance. And a large selection of apartments with different layouts on different floors, added John. And from the window you can see a small pond. I like everything. And the price is reasonable for us. Yes, but if my apartment were sold, we could buy a 2-bedroom in this house, John said, frustrated. The important thing is to start somewhere. Savannah encouraged him. I have enough money for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's better than renting. I agree, John replied in the same frustrated tone. But don't get me wrong. I've never lived off a woman. And now I don't want you to think that I need your apartment. What are you talking about? Savannah was indignant. You and I are husband and wife. It's not silly, John continued. It's very important to me. What are you saying? If you happen to be the one buying this apartment, then let it be registered in your name. What's more, I'm proposing a prenup. Savannah looked at her husband, trying to understand whether he was serious or joking. But there was not a muscle on John's face. He was determined. Okay, Savannah agreed, if you insist. Yes, I want my woman to have confidence in me at all times. You are my knight, Savannah said with a smile and hugged her husband. Congratulations, Savannah, said a representative man in a suit and tie, handing the new keys to the next tenant. You are now the full owner of a 1-bedroom apartment with finishes. Thank you, Savannah replied, and without hiding her joy, looked at the people standing on the playground, future neighbors. The keys were ceremonially handed over to all the apartment owners present. Then on the same playground, the developer organized a small amateur concert. In the evening, Savannah and John returned home happy and discussed their move to the new apartment. During the conversation, they did not immediately hear the phone ringing from John's jacket pocket, but the caller was persistent. Looking at the screen and seeing an unfamiliar number, John was surprised and answered the call. Hello. Yes, it's me. I'm selling. I'll be able to drive up next weekend. Okay, all right. When the call was dropped, John grumbled unhappily. It's about time. Did you find a buyer for the apartment? Savannah guessed. I think so, John replied. What am I supposed to do with him now? We could have bought a bigger apartment a month earlier. And now not to sell the new apartment. Maybe we shouldn't sell your apartment yet, Savannah suggested. Let it sit. And then we'll spend 6 months looking for a buyer again. No, as long as there's someone who wants it, we have to go through with it. Savannah replied with a shrug. The next weekend, John went to his town, and Savannah, not knowing what to do, walked from corner to corner. Suddenly, the phone rang. Hi, sis, said Savannah, answering the phone. Hi, Savannah, Fiona said without much joy in her voice. What's up? What are you doing? I'm thinking about moving to a new apartment, Savannah answered, and then asked. Why are you so sad? Did something happen? I don't even know where to start, the sister hesitated. Mom and Dad, well, they're back together. I don't want him to come home. We're too cramped. Dad got a house in the country from his parents, but Mom doesn't want to leave town. Why don't you talk to her? No way. Don't involve me in your business. I've already given up my share of the apartment. We'll take it from here. Savannah, are you sure you won't claim it? Fiona asked. I won't, she promised. Thank you, sis, Fiona exclaimed happily. You're the best. After settling all the issues in his hometown, John returned home satisfied. Savannah, he exclaimed from the doorstep, I propose to buy a plot of land in the suburbs and gradually build a cottage. What do you think about it? I think it's a good idea. Surprisingly, such a plot of land was found very quickly. On New Year's Eve, the happy newlyweds were on their way to visit Fiona and Adam. The hospitable hosts were happily unwrapping the gifts brought by their sister and her husband. Savannah was getting to know her niece, and Fiona was jokingly indignant. What a sister! She got married and didn't even tell anyone. When the first passion subsided, Savannah asked, Where's Mom? She moved in with her father, Fiona replied dryly. The older sister didn't pursue the subject. The New Year's Eve party turned out to be fun. Adam and John, despite the age difference, had quickly found common ground. On the eve of homecoming, Savannah asked her sister, Have you seen your mom lately? Not since she moved away, Fiona replied and added, If she hasn't called, then she's doing well. Savannah was a little surprised by her sister's answer, but she remained silent. The day the guests left, Fiona received a call from her mother. "Daughter, can I come and see you?" she asked, swallowing her tears. "What happened?" "Father, I guess I was wrong to contact him again." "Of course you can come," Fiona said in a disgruntled tone, "but your former room is now our bedroom." "Thank you, Fiona," said the mother, ignoring the warning. "I'm already at the house. I'll be right there." A minute later, the doorbell rang. On the threshold stood the mother. When she saw her eldest daughter, she fidgeted and said hello, fixing with her hand her hair, which was dislodged from under the cap, thus covering her eye. Savannah noticed a bruise on her mother's face that was carefully covered with foundation. "Happy holidays, Mom," Savannah said, hesitating to go up to her and give her a hug. "I'd like you to meet my mom. This is my husband, John, and this is my mom." "Joanna," the woman introduced herself and extended her hand to her son-in-law. "I didn't expect you to marry such a handsome man." She turned to her daughter. "Well, why not? You have a beautiful daughter. She's smart, she's beautiful." "Yes, she got that for me," Joanna said coquettishly. "Why are we standing on the doorstep? Why don't we sit down and celebrate?" "We should get back," Savannah said. "It was nice to see you." "Come visit," Fiona said. "You too," John said. "We will," Fiona promised. Savannah's heart was raw after seeing her mother. She was silent the whole way. Understanding his wife's mood, John did not bother her. Later, from a phone conversation with her sister, Savannah learned that having contacted with her father, Joanna was addicted to alcohol. "And when they get drunk, they start to find out the relationship," complained Fiona. "Swearing turns into fights. That's why I didn't want Dad to move back in with us." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Savannah asked. "What difference would it have made? You already helped Mom out once. Where's the gratitude? She blamed you even more for ruining her family." Savannah was hurt to hear those words, but she was used to her mother's attitude. "I persuaded her to stay, but she decided to go back to her father," Fiona continued. "And when I forbade him to cross the threshold of our house, she, in solidarity with him, signed over the apartment to me and slammed the door loudly." As you can see, their relationship lasted a little over a month. "Is she staying with you now?" Savannah asked. "No. A week after you left, her father came to get her and persuaded her to move back in with him." "I don't understand her," Savannah said with genuine regret. "Why would she be so nervous in her old age? Maybe she needs medical attention." "I don't think so. I don't think she'd want to go to therapy." It's been 5 years. The sisters still called each other, occasionally visiting. John and Savannah gradually built a house, a bathhouse, and a gazebo of their country estate. "Our country house is not for work, but for relaxation," Savannah said. And indeed, on every holiday and just on weekends, they often went out of town, inviting friends to visit. One day, after a phone conversation with his mother, John asked his wife, "Savannah, would you mind if I moved my parents to our country house? They're in poor health. They'll be closer to us." Savannah had a great relationship with her mother-in-law and father-in-law, so she immediately agreed to her husband's proposal. On the next weekend, the couple went to John's parents and offered them to move into their house. "But what about our apartment?" hesitated mother. "And what will happen to her?" John asked. "Let it stand. She does not ask for bread." After a little thought, the parents agreed. Soon they were living at their son and daughter-in-law's cottage and were happy that now they could spend more time in the fresh air. Savannah was pleased to see the old people happy. She liked to keep secrets with her mother-in-law, just as she had done with her grandmother when she was a child. John's mother was an intelligent woman and tried to stay out of their lives, but there was one question she couldn't stop asking. "Savannah, why haven't you and John had children yet?" she asked her one day. "I would love to have grandchildren in my old age." It was a depressing question. For many years, she and her husband had dreamed of children, had been examined by various doctors, had taken medications prescribed by them, but all in vain. They all said the same thing. "You're both healthy. Maybe there's an incompatibility between you." And no one could tell me what to do about the incompatibility. Savannah had given up hope of becoming a mother. Once in a conversation with her husband, she even suggested that he break up with her and find another woman who could give birth to an heir. But John was outraged when he heard about it. "Never, do you hear me? Don't ever suggest that I break up with you. I love you and I wouldn't trade you for any other woman. If God doesn't give us children, then we'll live together and enjoy each other's company." Savannah and John never returned to the subject again, They seemed resigned to their fate, but when Savannah heard the question of children from others, she felt uneasy. Fiona and Adam had another daughter. They were happily married, but Fiona had little contact with her mother. Joanna, after burying Jack, who was stabbed to death by a neighbor in a drunken brawl, stayed to live in his house. She'd asked to stay with his youngest daughter, but Fiona didn't want to take in a mother. "I don't think she'd be a good example for her granddaughters." She explained her decision. "I don't want any drunkenness here." Savannah and her husband visited Joanna several times, offering to help fix up the house, which was almost falling apart. But her mother wouldn't accept any help from her eldest daughter. "She abandoned us years ago. She's gone to her capital city with all her money." "Go there," she shouted at her. "I don't want anything more from you. When I asked you, you didn't want to share. Now get out of here. Forget you have a mother. You're ungrateful. I raised you alone, without a father, and you ruined my family. You kicked out my husband. You abandoned Fiona." "I didn't abandon anyone." Savannah tried to justify herself to her mother. "You're the one who threw me out of your life like an unwanted kitten. After my grandparents died, I was just floundering on my own." "Well, keep on floundering. Don't mess with me. I've got someone to take care of me. Fiona always loved me, unlike you. That's why you're living here, in this shack," Savannah said with resentment. "It's none of your business. I can live wherever I want. Get out of my house," shouted Joanna after her fleeing daughter. Having witnessed the last scandal, John forbade Savannah to visit her mother, and Savannah herself had lost her last desire to visit her. 6 months after moving to the country house of his son died John's father. The mother was very worried, but tried to hold on. After consulting, the couple moved her to their apartment. "Cramped, but no offense," said John. "Don't be so pompous," his wife said. "We have a one-room apartment, but it's big." "Now that I've settled in," said her mother, "why should our apartment be idle? Sell it, John, and exchange yours for a 2- or 3-room apartment." A year later, the couple celebrated a housewarming party in a spacious 1-bedroom apartment. The house was full of guests that day. Fiona and Adam and their daughters came to congratulate their relatives. Friends brought a lot of gifts. The holiday was a success. Savannah and her mother-in-law set a gorgeous table. Everyone was satisfied. In the evening, after seeing his friends off, John took his relatives to the country house. They expressed a desire to stay a few days with him. Savannah and her mother-in-law were clearing the table when she felt sick. John's terrified mother called an ambulance and called her son. By the time he returned, a doctor was already sitting beside Savannah. When she saw John, she said hello and with a smile. "Congratulations, co-worker. You're going to be a daddy soon. And you, mommy, need to take care of yourself." She turned to Savannah. "In the coming months, you should not be overexcited or overstressed."
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.